Yep. Okay. As usual, be thinking about the order you want to do this in. My order is usually hard curves, hard angles, hard straight lines, meaning left to right or up and down. Now if you'll notice on this plan, there's really nothing I can line up with my bar, so almost all of my work on this is going to be done with the triangles, not with this. It's all, none of it's at 90 degrees or at 0 degrees. So I can even slide that out of the way. Now we've got a fair amount of hard curves here, and some of this stuff you're just going to make up if you don't understand what's going on. So I'm going to... Most of the lines at the edge of the road are curved. We got a bunch by the houses, and you'll see what I do. That one's under a tree. I'm not worrying about the stuff that's covered with a tree. It is tiny. Now you will depending on how far you want to pursue this, now you have to decide, do you want to show the proposed one? I'm going to show the proposed one. Get all the curves. It looks like I've gotten all the curved roadway. Now I'm going to go ahead. Any straight sections of road, what I'm pretty much going to do is just connect the dots. Oh, we got a curve there. The nice thing about these curves is they're pretty small. So it's a little easier to do them. Now that you're starting to see a problem. What happens is when I freehand, I'm moving the pen slower. And if I do that, I have to be careful that my lines are a similar width when I draw them straight. And that's not always easy. Again, it's small, so you're doing it with a lot of really teeny tiny lines. I also tend to don't just let my roads drift off. I tend to put an end to them, even if it's not actually the end. What else we got here? I got most of that road. I've got a driveway here. This is all existing. And we're going to have to figure out what is the property line. And I'm going to make it up. Got another curve here. I'm probably not even going to bother showing this stuff or a lot of this out here. I'm just going to focus on what seems to be in this property line. I will show a little bit of Mammoth Road. Again, I'm going to cut off those roads. Like so. Alright, so it looks like I've got, I don't even know what that is. I'm just going to stick with that being a building. Alright. I want to move on to the buildings, the hard lines. Now I could go over them with my small pen, but I know that I'm going to have to profile them eventually. So why do it twice? I'm just going to go right to a profile line. And again, the drawing's small. If your Sharpie's nice and pointy, like that. Notice the difference between those two lines? I mean, it's just a Sharpie. This one's more squished down, this one's thinner. I'd go with a thinner one because this is a tiny drawing. So let's just start wailing away on these buildings. And you got to be careful. I'm going to be doing a lot of back and forth with this. I'm kind of moving all over the page. And I do that so hopefully I won't drag my Sharpie through other work that I've done. If I'm confused about something, I'll just make it up for now, or leave it out. Okay, this right here is not a house. That's a detention basin. So don't draw it in as a house. Sharpie's getting tired. I can tell already that when it comes times to do shadows on these, that's going to be exciting. Because you just don't know. I didn't overlap there because I got a tree there. I'm working as hard as I can to not drag this triangle through lines I just did. So I pick it up off the paper every time I move it. Looks like I got most of the building. So all that's left is the property line, which I'm going to do towards the end. I want to get the trees in there. My next step will be to start thinking about the trees, and I've got a tree line here, I've got wetlands here. I'm going to assume that the trees are just going to fall where the wetlands isn't. I'm going to have to make up some trees here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab a scrap of tracing paper. I'm going to just put these here. And I'm only doing this so I can line this up in the future. I'm going to get a pencil. Actually, I don't even need a pencil. Remember, this is a piece of tracing paper. I got a tree line that I think is right here. I've got wetlands here. So let's just start making some circles. I'm trying to keep them about the same size as what's there. I want to define the edge of those wetlands, and I want to have some that hang over the property line. I might throw an even bigger one every now and then. I'm trying to mix them up so I don't do all small or all big. A lot of times I'll do a couple big ones, like 1, 2, connect them with some medium ones, put a big one here, put another big one there, hanging out over a tree. Again, I'm just trying to be somewhat random. I got a little carried away. That one's definitely in the wetlands. That's all right. Alright, so there's our forest where the forested area is. And I've made it a point to put a few trees over the property line. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go right to those trees. I'm going to do trees next, and then I'm going to put a double line around the road. I'm going to slide this under here as best I can. Line it up. It'll go over the tape. Come on now. We'll get there. Alright, see where I drew those, real quickly drew those houses in? Now I can see if it's close enough. That's good. So once I get this forest traced off, which is pretty simple, and again, these are because these trees are so small, they're going to go really quick, or much quicker, but I'm just doing the outlines of the clumps. But in order to figure out the clumps, I had to draw these circles first. Now you could use the circle template to do that. These trees are so small that I felt comfortable freehanding them, but I will leave that up to you. I mean, if one's a little egg-shaped, by the time I'm done going around it with that W, and you'll never know if they were that egg-shaped. And again, I know that it always seems to take a long time to draw the forest, but it makes the drawing look so much better. If you're in a hurry and just trying to get a point across, you can always just draw a tree line. But did anybody do anything exciting this week? I did. Nobody did anything exciting. What was that? Yeah? Nice. And how old are your kids again? It's a wild age.
There's a lot of adult humor, but I haven't seen Harry Potter since they were children, so I don't understand.
Well,
I got laughed at.
I got a new car.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I did not want to get a new car, but I had to get a new car.
What did you end up getting?
I got a Kia Carnival. It's a minivan. It's not a minivan, it says. It's an MPV, a multi-purpose vehicle. It's a minivan. I like minivans, so that's all right. But I will tell you that if you're looking for bargains, now is not the time to be buying the car. Because there is no negotiating. Alright, I've got all the forest in. I will say, if you're looking to sell a car, I don't think used car prices are going to be much better than they are right now for quite some time. So the trade-in's always great. Almost makes up for the pain of the purchase price. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the rest of the trees. These are the ones that were put in there, or proposed to go in. And you'll see I got a lot of them over the roads. But I like the car a lot. The kids like the car a lot. That's a good thing. Oop. Every now and then when you're doing this, you're going to find lines you missed. finding many of them. I will be. She hasn't yet, and she's the one that can drive on her own is a timid thing, and she just, she's not timid, but she doesn't do well with change, and this is a big change. So she actually learned to drive on her last minivan, so it's not like she's not used to it, but she learned to drive in the minivan, and then we let her take the test in her Honda Fit. She much prefers driving the Honda Fit. Because it's tiny, it's easy to park. She just, it's not intimidating. Not that the Odyssey was that intimidating, but it's a little more school bus-like. So now we have a new one, and like I said, she's braver than any 6 people I know. I mean, if she thinks someone is unfairly picking on somebody else, it really doesn't matter. She's going after it. You know, if you're bullying someone and my oldest daughter sees it, I don't care if you're Hulk Hogan. If you're treating somebody wrong, she'll be in your face. She just would do it. Very brave girl. But some things make her nervous. And driving the van's one of those things. We'll see how my middle daughter does with it. We'll see who puts the first scratch up. One of the first minivans they had was a dark blue Toyota Sienna. And my oldest daughter was about 3. And I noticed that on the side of it, on the big dark blue door, there were these white scratches. These fine white scratches, because apparently the primer underneath the paint was white. And I didn't notice it too much, and then I looked, I said, yeah, there's a lot of those scratches there. That's an issue. And then I saw little rocks on the ground near where these scratches were. And I said, Amelia, have you been carving scratches in my car? Oh, no, Papa. I wouldn't do that. Then I come around to the front fender. There's a little tiny A scratched in there. Yeah, she admitted it, and that A was there when I traded the car many years later. So maybe I won't let her drive the van now that she's 17, just to get even with her for scratching up my first one. Alright, trees. There were more of these than I thought there would be. Notice I put a couple different ones in there just because I got tired of doing my cheap ones. Gonna put my center dots in. Once I'm done with these trees, and there are plenty of them, what do folks think I should do next? You guys have done enough of these site plans. You must think something's got to happen next. It's certainly not done. I would probably do the shadows next. I'm still debating whether I'm going to double line the road. I might and I might not. Looks like I got all those, so let's put some. Now again, these trees are pretty tiny, so you're probably not going to be able to put 10 stems in there. 2 or 3 is going to be about it, and you might even want to leave some blank, some of the smaller ones. I'm going to aim for the bigger ones for now. I'm not even sure where those trees were. I was kind of traumatized when I brought back my daughter and scratching the car. How'd they do? That's where I started my first. Actually, it was a church for my second one, school for my first one. Did she realize that a great quote of my friend back in 1976 was, he had recently gotten his license. He says there are few things in life that look so easy and are so hard. Because you watch your parents drive and it's like, how hard can that be? Dad can do it while he's smoking his pipe. It's a lot harder than it looks. You forget what it was like the first time getting behind that car, behind the wheel of the car. I have to take my middle one out though, same thing. I'll probably take her to school. Another great place to take them is, well, I don't know how, during COVID, Southern New Hampshire University was perfect because nobody was there. All the roads are wicked narrow, and it was like a little city you could drive through with no other car. It was a ghost town. It was wild. It was kind of freaky. Nice.
Okay, wait for your friend.
Yep.
She did.
Nice.
That's too embarrassing.
I remember. It's all coming back. We had Amelia struggled with. I actually taught my sister-in-law how to drive too. That was fun. Her big thing was stopping was not really high on her priority list. We'd be driving along, and she'd be, corners in particular, she'd be coming up into corners way too fast. It would be, Lori, slow down. Slow down, Lori. Lori, slow down. Slower, Lori. Brakes! Just before we flipped the car. She got better. All right. So, I've got the trees kind of fleshed out. We're going to do the shadows. Now, I hate to do it, but I'm going to. I wouldn't do what I'm about to do, but you're going to probably want to do it. So, the trees we'll figure out. The buildings, trace them. Now I know I'm doing this freehand. That's okay. Because we're just using it for a guide. So when we want to do this weird here, I'm going to make it a little easier on myself. All right, so, okay, first thing I'm going to try and do is that piece of tape will cooperate, is line these up right under what I traced them off of. So that looks pretty good about. Alright, just gonna line it up with what's there. What I'm doing is I'm looking for the far corners to see that they're all, like if I can get this corner and this corner to line up, typically the rest will look pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and gently pull it down and to the right at about a 45-degree angle. That's it, and that's as far as I have to go. I'll put a little slab of tape on there.
Can you go to your original one and move that?
What's that now?
The original one, you take that and move that?
You could. Either way would work.
Okay.
But now you can kind of see. Now I'm not going to make the shadows necessarily as big as I've drawn, but I can at least see where they go. So I know I've got a shadow here and here, a shadow here and here. Here, not much of one, but a shadow here, here, light one here, tiny one here, big one here, one here, none there, one here, none there, one here, not much there, here, not much there, here and here. See, that's why I do this, especially when you got all these angled buildings, because, you know, where's down and to the right when the building's pointing down and to the right. So now I'm going to take my triangle, and I'm just going to, first of all, now I want a Sharpie that's got a little more life in it, because I'm going to be doing some fairly serious lines in there. And I'm going to start just by doing one line on each building where I can that doesn't drag through the other lines. And this will be a lot of back and forth. Well, leaned into one of them, I don't know which one. This is dangerous. While I'm doing this, you might not be able to tell, but I actually am holding my triangle off the drawing. This can help it dry. I've got a few more left to go. And some of these are pretty faint. So if they're going to be tiny shadows, the ones that I'm drawing now are not. They look to be pretty good size. I'm trying not to put shadows over the trees. Alright, for example, this one right here, there's going to be a little shadow there, but it's not going to be much. So I would just do just a tiny one. This one doesn't look like it's got shadows on either side. This one doesn't have shadows on either side. This one's got a little one here. This one actually looks like it's got a little one there, which is kind of weird. Alright, so I've got shadows on all the buildings now. Now I'm going to go through, and I probably am going to double line. Oh, I'm going to do a property line, and then I'm going to add my texture after. So I've got to figure out where the property line is. I believe it's here, 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 and here. Now, I'm not gonna show all these other property lines up here, cause I think that's gonna be distracting.
How can you do these property lines with that sharp and then
Do those other ones in a thin one? You could. I'm mainly gonna just focus on this particular parcel.
the front view and the side views? Click on that, instead of like doing it with a thin Sharpie around.
Oh, like a double line? You know what? I probably wouldn't. I'm just gonna leave the property line around the property that we're working on. Cause remember, I mean, this is. That's what we-
It wasn't a thin line on the other one because it was like arrived with the sky line.
I'm gonna call it with that. I wouldn't even put the other ones around it. I'm gonna go ahead and do the double line through the roads though, to try and punch those out a little bit. And then I'm gonna have you come over and show me what you were thinking about that double line. That's not the double line you were talking about, is it?
No, not a double line. The difference between the fat Sharpie and the thin Sharpie were the front and side elevations like we did last week. And is it a fat Sharpie here because it's a property line, but then when you do it on something like this and you do
Oh,
skyline,
yes,
or
yeah.
okay.
The skyline, I do thin, and the reason I do that, and this one I'm trying to hang some stuff out of, even, the property line you wanna be kinda bold, with the site plan, it tends to dribble off into space. Without the property line, there's just no, there's really no defining it, it just kinda goes off. So you're using the property line to define it, again, try and get a few things hanging out of the property line to bring you in. Whereas on the elevation, the sky is more, you can do them without the sky at all. But the sky is, you don't really need it to define it, because it stands pretty good on its own before that. And if you put that heavy line in it, it fights your drawing. Whereas this one, I tend to think it kind of frames the drawing. Okay, I'd stop largely there as far as adding a bunch of stuff to this, but what I'm gonna do is I am gonna put in some texture. And I'm gonna do it with the grass and the pavement. And that's really the only place I need the texture. So when I do these lines, I try and make it a point to go all the way through. And I'm being a little random with them, and that's okay. Is that now?
Even drawings?
Oh, I'm not gonna show, I've left it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna label it or show it. It's, I mean, you could figure out a graphic way, if you can, if it's important that you show that, meaning that if it's, remember, we're trying to, how do I put this? So, the owner probably knows they have wetlands there. And, you know, they've paid someone to survey them. You know, this is as much to give people a sense of, a visual sense of what's going on, as opposed to a hard technical sense, you know, versus the drawing that we copied. You know, that one, yeah, you gotta show the planning board where the wetlands are, cause they asked for it. But, you know, they also might ask for a presentation drawing, colored, you know, or a rendering of some type, because you just don't get a sense from the construction drawing, you just don't get the excitement and the real sense of what's going on visually. There's so much and half the problem is because there's so much information on there that it tends to overwhelm the drawing. I mean, I think this here and what have I not done? The tree shadow. So let's see if that makes a difference, because it's looking pretty muddy right now. And I think once we pop those trees, we should be somewhat happy with it. Yeah, not with that Sharpie. Just taking my fat Sharpie. I don't like that one, that's a little too fat. I want a pointy, juicy, oh boy, what do we got here? That should work. Okay. So these trees I'm gonna go in with a thin Sharpie, because if I put the fat Sharpie I'm gonna lose them. But my cheap trees, and I'll come back to those. Now, you know, the trees, because they're kind of round, I have a pretty good idea where down and to the right is. With the buildings, because they're not round, because they're at an angle, I can easily get confused. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't really need to do a tracing to know where to put the shadows on my trees. And, I mean, you can see the difference already between the trees there and the trees there. I mean, those you can kind of see that they're trees, these you can't. I'm gonna go in and just do this. All I'm gonna do for these little fellas is just put a couple dots in there, just to punch them out a little bit. See, it's almost like I'm painting. I'm just putting a couple little tiny flecks in there. I do my scale. And I'd be thinking about where I wanted my scale in the drawing. Theirs is right there. I'm not that concerned. I mean, I don't mind where it is, but I think I would prefer to have it a little more over here. You can always move it. You can cut and paste it in GIMP if you don't like where it lines up. And I don't know, is there a north arrow on this? There isn't, but I'm going to make an assumption in a minute. So I like the scale better there than I did where they had it. Now their scale is pretty tiny, so I'm going to make it a little fatter. I'm making it a little taller. It's the same length. Whoops. Sometimes it's a good idea to hold it down with 2 pieces of tape. See what I'll show you in a minute. See, the original one was pretty thin, and I've gone ahead and make it a little taller and fatter, so the length is the same. I just made it a little fatter. For north arrow, I'm going to go ahead and use a circle template, assuming I can find it. And I'm just going to put that right here. Now, when you're drawing in ink with your circle template, mine's got, I don't know if you can see, there are little nubbins on it. You can kind of see them in the reflection. Right there's one. It looks like a little pimple. That helps lift it off the page. If you don't have one of those, if your circle template is just pure flat, like one side of this is, and will just sit right on the page, I almost recommend that you work it through a hole on your triangle. And I say this because you really don't want, it's real dangerous if it's flat against the drawing. Let's see if I can make it fail. No, I couldn't get it to, but you got to be really careful when you're working with a circle template that you don't get it under the template in the paper, or it'll suck the ink right out and make a huge blob. So what I'm going to do, when you're tracing a circle template in ink, make sure that the pen is straight up and down. Most of the time when you're writing, your pen's at an angle like this. When you do the circle template, you want it straight up and down. And hopefully you'll get it. If it's at an angle, you can't tell that much. That one's oblong, and the pen, it starts out, it gets fatter and narrower depending on where you are on the circle. So again, I would highly recommend that you really work at making it straight up and down. I'm just going to assume that north is up. And the shadows are occurring on June 20th at like 9:30 p.m. Because typically the sun comes from the south. Anybody see anything else they want me to do to this? I'm pretty good with it. But if there's anything else you'd like to add to it. You can kind of see the before and after. It's just simplified, and I think it just does a nicer job. It just makes a nicer presentation to people, to get an overall feel for what's going on. This one, you know, that's a retention basin. Well, it looks like the same as a house. You know, you can't really see that a lot of these trees are shading the road, but you can tell that they are. Whereas here you can kind of see that a lot of the trees are going to be impacting the road, more so than I think shows up on this drawing. The houses are the same line weight as a lot of the other lines. This was done by a civil engineer, my guess is, so that, you know, it was important that they showed this line fat because it's got a curve, if I had to guess. Well, that's important for a construction person, and it's important for the planning department to know that there's curbs there to assist in the draining, but it's not important visually for someone to know where the road, I mean, you look at this and it's like, this curb line is stronger than the property line. And this is typical of construction documents. They don't read as well. Having said that, I'm going to stop recording because every second I record,